My name's James McCullough and I do research using biological and analytical techniques. And one of the techniques I use is mass spectrometry. It's an absolutely amazing technique, really interesting, and it's been involved really from the beginnings of the 20th century up until today in developing our understanding of a wide range of areas. And in this talk, I'd like to start by talking about how mass spectrometry began and influenced and helped us understand the structure of the atom. So we have to go all the way back to the ancient Greeks, as we do with many things, of course, to sort of have a look at where things began in terms of our understanding of the atom. The ancient Greeks, some of them, had this idea that if you take matter, take anything you like, some table, chair, piece of paper, and you start cutting it up and divide that in half and then take half of that and divide it again, that there will come a point where you will no longer be able to divide anymore, and you'll have come to the sort of fundamental aspect of that material, and they called that atomos. And atomos being the uncuttable or indivisible unit of matter. And that is very much analogous to the way we think about atoms today, although not quite. And what I'd like to do is tell you a bit about how our ideas about the atom then have evolved since then. And it took quite a long time. So the ancient Greeks had this idea, but it didn't catch on. And probably because people didn't have experiments that they could do to really test that as a hypothesis, I suppose. But it took until the sort of 17th and then 18th century really for people to start doing experiments and really start to see whether that was true. And one of the founding fathers of modern chemistry is John Dalton. He was alive in the 19th century, and he did experiments to show that both atoms were different for different elements, the elements that were known then, and he said that atoms were indivisible, like the Greek idea. And he also said that the atoms for different elements were exactly the same. For a particular element, they were exactly the same. And they differed between the different elements. Now that idea was really the first theory of modern chemistry had for the structure of the atom. But it didn't take too long for a man called J.J. Thomson, who was a physicist. He started in Manchester in the UK and then did a number of very pioneering experiments down in Cambridge. And he developed what turned out to be a sort of proto-mass spectrometer, and I'm going to tell you more about that in future lectures. But he did experiments by measuring the mass of particles that were produced when you put an electric current through gaseous atoms. And what he found was that it didn't matter what element you put into the gas phase and put an electric current through. At the anode, the positive end in that system, a glass tube with an anode and a cathode in it, you always got negatively charged particles, and they were always the same. Didn't matter which element you used, they were always the same. And he did a very interesting experiment. He put a magnet to deflect the beam of particles, negatively charged particles, and from that was able to calculate their mass and their relative mass relative to a hydrogen atom. And he found that they were really small, so much smaller than the smallest elemental atoms that were known at the time. And this was the first evidence of electrons. And it was also fairly momentous because that showed that atoms were divisible. They weren't just they could be divided into a negatively charged small particle that was very small compared to the atom. Ernest Rutherford was a student of J.J. Thomson's, and he did a very famous gold foil experiment. You can find lots of information about this. We took a thin piece of gold foil, he fired what we call alpha particles, which are quite high energy small particles, at this piece of gold foil, and he had a circular phosphorescent detector around the gold foil, and he expected that these alpha particles would go straight through this thin sheet, because he expected that the idea of the atom that was developed from J.J. Thomson, which was actually called the plum pudding model, really the idea that these small negatively charged electrons were distributed around a positively charged sort of matrix, like a bit like the plums in a plum pudding, and he thought that because the alpha particles were very high energy, they would just go straight through. Most of them did, but some of them bounced back. And from that experiment, he was able to deduce that the positive charge wasn't just distributed in a matrix, it was concentrated in a really small nucleus. And this nucleus was positively charged, and the electrons that were negatively charged were around that atom. So Rutherford's atom was quite different in terms of size, and we'll talk a little bit about how that looks in a future lecture. One of the things that then was developed was the idea that those electrons weren't just distributed in a cloud around the nucleus, but Niels Bohr, another student of J.J. Thomson's, came up with this idea, looking at what we call the emission spectrum of hydrogen, or the emission spectrum of different elements. He noticed that actually the energy level, the energy that was released in the form of light when you excited these atoms, was released at certain energy levels. And he thought this probably means that the electrons don't just distribute themselves around randomly around this nucleus. They're at discrete energy levels or orbits. And he came up with this idea of the planetary model of the atom, and the idea that electrons are in orbits, a little bit like the Earth and other planets are in orbits around the Sun. Electrons were orbiting the nucleus of the atom. And this is a very, very useful model. We still use that today in textbooks, and it's a very nice way of describing or visualizing the atom. Because of course, and I probably should have said this, nobody's really, when these ideas of the atom were being developed, nobody could see those. They're so small that all these experiments were indirect ways of trying to understand the shape and the structure of this atom. And although we have been able to produce images of individual atoms today, they are very fuzzy, and you've got to have very, very well-organized systems to be able to do that. And we still, therefore, can't really visualize atoms in a very straightforward manner. Niels Bohr's planetary model was almost what we use today. There was one more model to come, and that was the quantum mechanical model that was developed in the 1920s and 1930s. Ernest Schrödinger was involved in that. In fact, a whole range of scientists were involved in developing that model, and it simply extended the idea of where these electrons are. Perhaps they weren't literally orbiting like planets do around the nucleus, because it wasn't quite clear how that would actually work without those electrons simply forming, how they would stay apart, and also how bonding would take place. And this quantum mechanical model really came up with an extension of where those electrons were, and the idea that electrons, there's a probability distribution you can derive about where it's likely an electron will be at any one time. And those distributions, in fact, have quite wonderful shapes, lobes, circular distributions, but also lobes in different directions. And that has helped quite a bit in understanding how bonding takes place between atoms, for example, to produce molecules. So that's a whistle-stop tour. Sorry to go so quickly through it all, but you can see how our understanding of the atom has developed through experimentation, all the way from the early Greeks, of course, who couldn't experiment but came up with a wonderful idea that was almost correct, through experiments that really started to show us that atoms were divisible, that there were electrons and positively charged particles, and indeed that those electrons were distributed in very specific ways around the atom that facilitates bonding between one atom to the next.